My name is Lily. I'm 27 years old, and I live in a quiet little town tucked near the mountains. It's the kind of place where the wind speaks louder than the people, and every house holds its own silence. My life is not easy. Every morning I open my eyes, and for a moment I forget where I am, but then it hits me. The fear, the ache, the heaviness I carry like a second skin. Every night, I lie in bed with tears pressing against my eyes like waves that never reach the shore. I cry in silence, careful not to wake my son. I want to escape, to leave this version of my life behind, but I don't know where I'd go. I don't know who I'd be without the pain. But it wasn't always like this. There was a time, distant now, when the world felt soft and full of wonder. I was a little girl once, happy and safe in the arms of people who loved me. My mother had a voice that sounded like lullabies. She sang to me every night while stroking my hair, and when the songs ended, she kissed my forehead and whispered dreams into my heart. She cooked with love, warm soups in winter, sweet pies in spring. My father was a gentle man who worked at the town's bakery. He'd come home with flour on his cheeks and bags of sweet bread in his arms. His smile was the kind that made you believe everything would always be okay. I had a little brother, Max. He was small and sweet and never left my side. Wherever I went, Max followed, asking questions, laughing at the wind, clutching my hand like I was his whole world. We were happy, just the four of us, wrapped in ordinary love. But that all changed the year I turned 9. It started with one morning. My father left the house early, the way he always did. He kissed my mother on the cheek, tousled Max's hair, and waved at me as I brushed my teeth. That was the last time I saw him. He never came back. At first, we thought maybe something happened at work. Then we waited for a day, then 2, then a week. People in town whispered. Some said he ran off with another woman. Some said he left without a word. My mother didn't believe any of it. She sat by the window for hours, clutching her teacup with both hands, staring out into the road like he might appear if she just wished hard enough. She waited like that for years. When I was 11, her body began to fade. She stopped eating, stopped smiling. Her skin turned pale like chalk. Her eyes lost their light. She moved slowly, like she was underwater. I started to do everything, washing clothes, cooking simple meals, taking care of Max. I remember standing on a stool in the kitchen, stirring soup with hands too small for the task, trying not to cry because I needed to be strong. I became a mother before I understood what childhood really was. One night, my mother called me to her bed. She held my hand, looked at me with eyes full of goodbye and said, "Lily, you're strong. Take care of your brother. Be brave." That was the last thing she ever said to me. The next morning, she was gone, cold and still. And my world cracked open. After her funeral, my father's brother came to live with us. His name was Robert. At first, he seemed like someone trying to help. He brought groceries, paid the bills, and told us everything would be okay. He said he'd keep us in school, said we were family. I wanted to believe him. I wanted someone to believe in. But it didn't last. Within months, Robert began to change. He drank more than he worked. Beer bottles littered the floor like shattered promises. His moods swung like pendulums. Quiet one moment, violent the next. If Max spilled milk, Robert exploded. If I came home late from school, he threw whatever was near, the remote, a cup, once even a chair. One night, He slapped me so hard I tasted blood. I didn't sleep that night. I curled into myself, trembling, trying to disappear beneath the blanket. The next morning, he acted like nothing had happened. Like it was normal. I wanted to run, but where would I go? I was still a child, with no money, no connections beyond our tiny town. I had no idea what the world outside looked like, only that it was far away and not meant for girls like me. So I stayed for Max. He was 8. He needed someone to protect him. I couldn't leave him behind. As the years passed, I learned the rules. Stay quiet, keep the house clean, never talk back, always have dinner ready before Robert stumbled in. I mastered survival the way other kids learned math. My smile became my shield, my silence, my safety. Then, at 16, something unexpected happened. I met a boy named Alex. He worked at a little convenience store near my school. He had kind eyes, the color of sunlit honey, and a soft voice that didn't match his tall frame. He always greeted me with a smile. One day, he handed me a piece of candy and said, "You look sad. Are you okay?" I wanted to cry right there, but I just nodded. That simple kindness, it undid something in me. Soon, Alex started waiting for me outside school. We talked about little things, music, dreams, books we'd never read. He told me he hated the town, said he wanted to travel the world. I said I wanted that too. He looked at me like he believed in the impossible and whispered, "Then come with me." I was scared, but I was also desperate. I wanted to breathe without fear, to sleep without nightmares. I wanted to be free. One evening, as winter crept into our bones, I left a note under Max's pillow. "I love you. I'll come back for you." And then I ran. Alex lived in a small room behind the store. It wasn't much. A single bed, a chipped table, walls that seemed too close together. But to me, it felt like heaven. He made me tea, wrapped me in a blanket, told me, "You're safe now." And for a few weeks, I believed him. We walked through fields, stargazed in silence, imagined futures we didn't think we deserved. I thought I had found love. But love isn't supposed to hurt. Alex lost his job. I watched the light leave his eyes. He started drinking, first quietly, then angrily. He'd sit for hours in the dark, nursing his pain, blaming the world, blaming me. He said I didn't understand him, said I should be grateful. Then one night, he pushed me. I fell and hit my head. He cried afterward, said, "I'm sorry. I didn't mean it." I wanted to believe him. I needed to believe him. I had nowhere else to go. But he did it again and again. Each time, he was sorry. Each time, I forgave. I told myself I could fix him, that love was patient, that he just needed time. Then, just after I turned 18, I found out I was pregnant. I was terrified. But a small part of me, maybe the part that still believed in fairy tales, was happy. I thought this child might change everything. I thought Alex would see the light and stop drinking, that he would become the boy who once gave me candy and asked if I was okay. But Alex wasn't happy. He was furious. He shouted, "Are you trying to trap me?" and threw a glass against the wall. I sobbed the entire night, curled on the floor, whispering apologies to a child that hadn't even arrived. One evening, after a particularly violent fight, I couldn't stand. My body ached, my belly throbbed, and I was afraid for my baby. I dragged myself to the local clinic the next day. The nurse took one look at me and said, "You need help." She handed me a card with the name of a women's shelter. That night, while Alex lay passed out on the couch, I packed a small bag and ran. The shelter was in another town. The building was quiet, the lights dim. Inside, 10 women lived different versions of my same story. Some had children, some had bruises, some had eyes that looked like mine, lost and tired. But we were all there searching for the same thing, peace. I stayed until my baby was born. A little boy with dark hair and my eyes. I named him Noah. The first time I held him, I wept. Not out of fear, but from a fierce, aching love. I whispered into his tiny ear, "No one will ever hurt you. Not while I'm breathing." Noah became my reason, my anchor, my light in the thickest dark. When he cried, I held him. When he smiled, I remembered how to. There were nights I didn't sleep at all, his tiny lungs screaming into the silence. But I didn't mind. I had known deeper exhaustion than this. I had known the kind that came with fear. With him, it was just love. Bone-deep, relentless love. We stayed in the shelter for a year. I took classes in the evenings, learned how to type, how to build a resume, how to look someone in the eye and say, "I deserve a chance." It felt like climbing a mountain barefoot, but I kept going because every day when I woke up, Noah looked at me like I was his whole world, and I wanted to be a world worth living in. Eventually, I found a job, receptionist at a dental clinic. The pay was small, but the office was warm and the people were kind. I used my first paycheck to buy Noah a blue winter jacket. I remember holding it against his tiny frame and thinking, we're doing it. We're actually doing it. We moved into a one-bedroom apartment. It wasn't much. Peeling paint, creaky floorboards, and a heater that only worked when it wanted to. But it was ours. I painted the walls yellow to make it feel like sunshine. I found a second-hand crib and placed it next to my bed so I could hold Noah's hand when he had nightmares. We didn't have much, but we had each other, and for the first time in my life, that felt like enough. But life doesn't always reward effort. Sometimes it tests you again just when you think you've passed. I hadn't heard from Alex in over a year, and then one afternoon, I came home to find him standing at the bottom of the stairs, smiling like nothing had happened. He said he missed me, said he'd changed, said he wanted to be a father. My stomach dropped. The air around him felt sharp, like walking into a room and knowing something terrible had happened there. I told him to leave. He laughed, said, "You think you're better than me now?" I didn't answer. I picked up Noah and walked past him. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped my keys. That night, I barely slept. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, the weight of the past pressing into my chest. The next day, I filed a restraining order. He broke it within a week. He showed up at the clinic, waited across the street, just far enough not to get arrested. Every time I walked out, I felt his eyes on me. I told my boss. She gave me a week off. I used that time to find a new apartment, farther away, deeper into the city. I changed my phone number. I looked over my shoulder everywhere I went. I started carrying pepper spray in my pocket. I was 21 and already tired of being afraid. But I didn't stop. I couldn't. I had Noah. He was growing fast, curious, wild, beautiful. He had a laugh that cracked me open. He'd run around the tiny apartment with a wooden spoon, pretending to be a knight and say, "I'll protect you, Mama." And every time, I smiled with tears in my eyes, because he didn't know. He was already protecting me. Just by being here, just by needing me. There were still nights I cried, quietly, into my pillow, not from regret, but from the weight. Single motherhood is a marathon with no finish line. I worried constantly about money, about safety, about whether I was enough. Some days I felt like I was made of paper, folding under pressure, tearing at the edges. But then Noah would crawl into my lap, wrap his arms around my neck and say, "You're the best mommy in the world." And somehow that would stitch me back together. I kept going. I found a better job, a better apartment. I made friends, real ones, women who had stories like mine. We became each other's lifelines. We'd trade childcare, meals, and the kind of laughter that only comes from shared survival. They saw me, not just the bruises I used to hide, but the strength I had built because of them. I started therapy. It was awkward at first. I didn't know how to speak without apologizing, but little by little, I peeled back the layers. I talked about my father leaving, my mother dying, Robert, Alex, all the ways life had asked me to shrink just to stay alive. And my therapist said something I'll never forget. She said, "Lily, you don't owe anyone your silence. You deserve to take up space." And so I started writing. Little things at first, journal entries, letters I'd never send, poems scribbled in the margins of receipts. It felt strange, putting my pain into words, but also freeing, like turning ghosts into paper and setting them on fire, like reclaiming the story. Noah turned 5 last summer. We had a small party in the park, balloons, cupcakes, a homemade crown. He ran around with frosting on his cheeks, shouting, "I'm the king of the world." And I watched him, heart full, thinking, I made this, not just him, this peace, this safety, this life. It hasn't been easy. Nothing about my journey has been, but every scar tells a story. Every crack in my heart has let light in. I'm not the same girl who left home at 16. I'm not the girl who stayed through bruises and broken promises. I'm a woman who survived, who built a life from ashes, who loves her son fiercely and herself more every day. There are still hard days, days where the weight creeps back in. But now I know how to breathe through it. I know how to ask for help. I know how to look in the mirror and say, "You are enough." And every night, before I fall asleep, I whisper the same words I once heard from a mother who loved me. Be brave. Time has a strange way of healing and reminding. The more it passes, the more you learn to live alongside the things that once broke you. They don't disappear. They just soften, become shadows instead of storms. Noah started school last fall. I cried the first day, not because I was sad, but because I had gotten him there, because I remembered the nights I held him in a dark shelter, whispering promises into the silence, and now here he was, standing in front of a school with a backpack almost too big for his small frame, waving at me with a smile so bright it made the whole world seem possible. That morning, I stood outside the school gates long after he had gone in, just breathing, just feeling. I had survived so much to get to that moment. Daniel was still in our lives, gentle, patient, always showing up, never pushing. He and Noah had formed their own quiet bond. They would sit on the living room floor, building towers of blocks while I folded laundry, and I'd hear Daniel ask, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And Noah would always say, "Happy, just happy." And every time I'd swallow a lump in my throat and whisper to myself, "That's the goal, isn't it?" Just that. Daniel never tried to replace anyone. He never asked for more than I was ready to give. He was simply there. And in a world that had always demanded too much of me, that was the greatest gift. Presence without pressure. Love without chains. One evening, as we sat on the porch after dinner, Noah asleep inside, Daniel reached for my hand and asked, "Do you think there's ever a right time? Or do we just make the time right?" I knew what he meant, and I knew I was ready. So slowly, cautiously, I let him in. We started sharing more. Meals, mornings, moments. Not everything. Not yet, but enough. He moved in a few months later, and we made a home together. Not perfect, but peaceful. I kept the walls yellow. We planted flowers outside. We laughed a lot. We cried sometimes too. Healing is not a straight line. It loops and dips and circles back when you least expect it. But having someone beside you, someone steady, makes all the difference. I never forgot the past, but I stopped living in it. I used to feel like a house built from broken wood, held together by fear, patched with silence. But slowly, I rebuilt, with stronger walls, with brighter light, with doors that only opened to kindness. I kept writing, and then, one day, I submitted a piece to a local magazine, a short essay about surviving domestic abuse and finding hope. I didn't expect anything, but a few weeks later, they called me. They wanted to publish it. That was the first time I saw my name in print. By Lily M. 3 little words that felt like a lifetime in the making. After that, more doors opened. I started giving talks again, volunteering at the shelter where I once lived, sitting with women who looked at me the way I used to look at others, like maybe hope was just a story other people told. I sat beside them and said, "No, it's real, and you're not alone." Some of them cried, some of them stayed silent, but all of them listened. Because when you've been hurt, truly hurt, you recognize truth in someone else's eyes. And I told them the truth, that pain doesn't define them, that survival is not weakness, and that love should never leave bruises behind. Max came to visit one summer. He was taller than I remembered. He'd grown into himself, confident, warm, with a quiet strength I hadn't seen before. When he saw me, he didn't say anything at first, just pulled me into a hug and held me like he wasn't letting go again. We talked for hours that night about Mom, about the things we lost, about the things we found again. He told me he'd started writing too, that he was thinking of becoming a social worker. He said, "I want to help kids like us." And I smiled through my tears, because somewhere, in the middle of all that darkness, we had both become light. The legal side of things wasn't easy. Even after I got full custody, Alex tried to reach out. Letters, messages through old friends, each one a quiet attempt to claw back control. But I had learned the difference between fear and caution. I didn't respond. I didn't engage. I saved everything, documented it, and eventually, with the help of my lawyer, we filed to make the custody permanent and final. The court agreed. He was officially stripped of any rights. That night, when the papers arrived, I sat on the floor of our apartment and cried, not out of sadness or anger, but closure. It was over, finally, fully, and in its place was something better, a future of my own design. Daniel proposed quietly, just the way I would have wanted. No crowds, no cameras, just us, in the kitchen, flour on my nose from baking cookies with Noah, and him kneeling on the old linoleum floor with a ring I had never expected and words I had longed to hear. "Lily," he said, "you don't owe me a yes. You don't owe me anything, but I want to spend my life loving you and Noah, not saving you, not fixing you, just being with you, as you are, as we are, and I said yes. Not because I needed him to complete me, but because I was already whole, and I wanted to share that wholeness with someone who saw it. We got married in a small park with only the people who mattered. Max walked me down the aisle. Noah carried the rings. I wore a simple dress with flowers in my hair, and when I looked into Daniel's eyes, I didn't feel fear. I didn't feel doubt. I felt peace. I felt love, and I felt ready. Now, years later, I live a life I once couldn't even imagine. We bought a small house near the hills, quiet, green, full of light. Noah is 9. He plays soccer. He reads chapter books. He tells jokes that make no sense and laughs at them anyway. He still holds my hand when we walk to the bus stop. And sometimes, when I tuck him in at night, he whispers, "I love our life, Mama." And I do too. I still write. I've published more essays, started a podcast, spoken on panels, worked with shelters to create safer spaces for women and children escaping violence. Not because I want to relive my story, but because I want others to know they can rewrite theirs. I've met so many survivors, so many warriors in quiet skin, and every time I hear their stories, I remember who I was. I remember the girl who slept with the door locked and a bag under her bed, just in case. And I thank her for surviving long enough for me to live. Life isn't perfect. It never will be. I still have scars. I still double-check locks sometimes, still wake from dreams that pull me backward. But now, I know how to breathe through the fear. I know how to lean on love instead of run from it. I know how to stand in the sun and not flinch. Because I made it. Because I chose to. And if you're reading this, if you're in a dark place right now, know this. You can choose to. You can walk away. You can start over. You can survive. And one day, not only will you survive, you will thrive. You are not alone. You're not broken. You are not the things that were done to you. You are more. More than pain. More than fear. More than silence. You are light. And the world needs your fire. So be brave. Just like I was told long ago by a mother who loved me, by a brother who forgave me, by a child who saved me, by a man who saw me, and by the woman I became. Be brave. And one day, you'll wake up, hear your child laughing, feel the sunlight on your face, and realize you're finally home.